Good evening, everyone. Good evening, John. Hope everyone is well and staying healthy and living the dream one nightmare at a time. My name's Ross, and we're going to do another Learning with Line 6 this evening. And let's do that really awkward bit and get rid of the delay where I kind of say, is my voice okay and is the guitar sounding okay? There's the guitar, there's my voice. Are the levels all right? Can you hear everything? Do I need to turn anything up? Do I need to turn anything down? Let me know, and I'll just fill for a minute. Sounding good? Nice one, John. A little. You're really southern though, so you know, all good. Sounds good, Matt. I'll take your judgment over John's a little bit. Thank you. So, choosing a subject for tonight, we're going with EQ. Now, on the face of it, EQ is potentially a really boring subject, but there's so many different kind of parts to it and so many different things that you can do. Some of this is going to be my own personal opinion and my own personal choices. Some of it is kind of just general theory that you can take into the analog world, into various other kind of little parts of your rig. So hopefully you're going to get something out of tonight. Danny Lee, good evening, says we need a JP2C on the Helix. I would agree, or at least a Mark II C+. Kind of the same thing, but whatever. So EQ, I'm going to be using HX Stomp XL for this, but obviously this can go to Pod Go, it can go to full Helix, whatever you like. If we start with the global EQ, this is kind of either an underused or a misunderstood part of the Helix family. The way I look at global EQ is basically like a mastering tool, I guess, for the whole unit. So you spend all this time kind of crafting your sounds and getting your presets together and getting everything all sounding amazing at home, and then you get to the gig and there's too much bass or there's too much high end or whatever, or you're playing a big wooden stage and it's super boomy, or a tiled room with loads of windows and it's really bright. That's when I would use global EQ. So it's all these sounds that you've created at home or in a rehearsal studio, and then you turn the global EQ on, and then you just tweak that to for the room. Basically, I don't pretend that I'm an EQ guru. I kind of use what I need EQ for, which is very rare, and we'll kind of cover some of the cool things that you can do with EQ in a bit. Global EQ, like I say, I would generally just use that as you've got your core sounds, all your levels are set, and then you just use global EQ to tweak for that particular room that you're playing in, or studio, or whatever, basically. So I wouldn't, because remember, global EQ is across everything. Now, something to bear in mind, if you're using anything with L6 links, if you're using rack, floor, or LT, and using the digital outs, it doesn't affect the digital outputs. So it'll only affect the jacks and the XLR outs. So something to bear in mind, and that was something I discovered using PowerCab by accident, because like many of you, I don't read manuals, because manuals, you know, whatever. But yeah, so I'm now actually using the XLR out with PowerCab, and I've got access to the global EQ, so I can just tweak it a little bit more. So that's the global EQ thing. And again, you've got all the different, I will show you real quick for anyone that hasn't seen it. So if we go to global EQ, there you go, and on the global EQ, you've got the low cut and the high cut. These are generally sort of what I use if I'm using global EQ. So basically, I'll just turn the low cut on, and I'll tweak that for whatever, basically. So I'll, you know, take out some low end rumble if the stage is too beefy. If there's no low end in the room at all, then I'll leave that as is. Maybe shave some high end off. Again, it's all personal preference. It's entirely up to your good selves. Have a play. You can hold bypass on Helix units, turn global EQ on or off. Helpful hints. Yes, yes you can. And John, you love a manual. Well, The less said about that, the better. So, what I've done with this preset, and this is kind of going to go through, I'm going to use one amp, one cab, a little bit of reverb or talent, as I call it, and I'm going to use a bunch of different EQs in a bunch of different places to kind of show you what's what. So, choosing an EQ, you've got a bunch of different ones to choose from, and they all do EQ, funnily enough. So if we go here, so we've got simple EQ, low and high cut, low and high shelf, parametric, tilt, 10-band graphic, calligraphic. The acoustic sim's in there, but it's kind of not really an EQ. If you are a little bit wary of EQ, simple EQ is really good because the low end's kind of taking its care of itself, the high end's taking care of itself, and then the mid frequencies, you can kind of just move that mid frequency around and you'll hear where you're kind of going. Low and high cut, real simple. That is in addition to the low and high cut on the cab. So I'll actually show you the cab that the amp that I'm using. So I'm using the Cali Texas Channel 2. They're the settings. And there's the cab. I've got the 160 ribbon, inch and a half from the grill, bit of low cut, bit of high cut, some early reflections, and the rest is as is. So back to the EQ. Low and high shelf. There's a cool trick you can do with this, and the fabulous John Cordy in the comments there, he's done a cracking video on this. So if you go to the John Cordy YouTube channel, check out that video, which he shamelessly stole from our good man Eagle. Yeah, that's worth doing. We'll cover that as well. Parametric. Now this is if you love EQ and you know kind of frequencies and stuff, which I do not, so I don't touch this one. But if you know kind of specific hertz and how to boost and what cue you want, the parametric is killer for that. Tilt's really handy as well. You could use this instead of maybe the global EQ. You could put this block, if you have spare blocks, in every preset and just do it on a preset per preset basis. And this is really cool. So you just kind of tilt, shave some high end off, shave some low end off. That's a really useful one. 10-band graphic, again, very kind of specific on frequencies, if you know what you're doing with the frequencies and know which ones you want. The calligraphic is one I use a lot because I'm very familiar with this, with these frequencies, so I kind of know what they do. So that is where we are. Keep the comments. Igor gave that a hint. Yes. Right, so let's have a look. So this is what I'm using. So this is what the amp sounds like. So it's kind of gainy, it's very beefy. Oh, the guitar, by the way, I've gone for a change tonight. I'm using the marvelous Yamaha Pacifica 1611 MS, the Mike Stern signature model. Totally stock, but I've put a Duncan Fat Cat in the neck because I like it and I can. And this is a cool one because it cleans up really well with the volume control. So I can do a lot just with the amp model. You'll see on the signal chain, I've got the guitar coming in, 2 different EQs in the front, 2 different EQs at the back, and then I've split the signal, and you'll see I've got some reverb in there, and that's going out the main output. But I've also got this and a little bit of delay, and that's going out of center return. So I'm actually kind of running in stereo, and you'll see why in a little while. So, so you've been through the EQs, you have chosen which one might suit you best, or you know what you're doing. We need coffee. Boom. And you go, right, okay, what do I want to do with this? Depending on where you put the EQ, it can have a dramatic effect or a not so dramatic effect if you're getting into extreme settings. So bearing in mind, if you're putting something in the front, so you got a gainy amp like that, If you're putting an EQ, say as a boost, and we've covered using EQs as boosts in previous videos, if you put it in front of the amp, it's not going to get any louder particularly, but it will get gainier or not gainier, and I'll show you a cool trick for that in a bit. If you put it after the amp and cab, then you're kind of using it as a mastering tool. Now, my opinion on, and I see a bunch of people kind of using an EQ sort of after the amp, before the cab, or after the cab, or last in the chain, or whatever, to fix a problem. And that's fine if you want to do that. My opinion is, if you are having to put an EQ block in there to fix something that's wrong with the core sound, then the core sound's wrong. You know, you should be able to get a great sound with just an amp and a cab. Maybe if you prefer the sort of super squishy saturation of stacking multiple drive pedals together in front of a clean amp, which I do a lot of as well, then that's cool. You may kind of lose some low end in there, so yeah, maybe kind of tweak the EQ after that. But generally, for 99% of the sounds you're going to be going for, the core kind of dry sounds, just an amp and a cab will get you there, and then you can use EQ after that as an effect for a specific purpose, basically. So let's cover that. Actually, let's go with the EQ. No, let's go with the EQ before. So first in line. I'll get this right one day. So I've got a simple EQ on both of these, and you'll see very, very different settings. I'm actually going to crank that up a little bit. Now, this is a gainy amp. So I'm going to add two different channels. These are basically going to act like two different channels to this amp. So that's my core sound. And with a flick of a switch, I can add this. And you'll see I've actually got some low end boosted, I've cut some mids, left the highs where they are, and I've lowered the gain quite considerably. So now I have a clean sound. Before, and now the clean sound. This is not a trick exclusively to me. I actually nicked it from Paul Gilbert, legend. Something he did a lot was set his amp quite crunchy and use an EQ pedal. He had a signature one, but varies. Any EQ pedal will work to actually bring the input down. And it's the same as basically rolling your guitar volume down. Now, the problem with that is, depending on what guitar you're using or what pickups, if there's no treble bleed on there, it might, and again, depending on the amp model you're using, if there's no treble bleed on there, then you could quite easily get all muffly and horrible. If you do have a treble bleed on there, it can get a little bit bright and nasty. So using an actual EQ pedal, you can really kind of shape what you want to do. You can bring the level down and shape what you want to do. Now, if I just kind of do it with my volume control, when you play guitar, then talk, the voice is really quiet. Right, okay. I think, give me 2 seconds. Right, let's see if that works. Wait a sec before you speak after playing your guitar. Sorry, Paul, I am really terrible at that. I've got a mute switch and I've stopped using that. So hopefully this will work. See if this works. How's that? Does that work? Let me know. So yeah, using an EQ pedal before, bring the gain down and kind of boosting the lows, yeah, you can get a nice clean sound. Now there's still a little bit of crunch on that, so I can bring that down even a little bit more. I like that little bit of hair. Just a little bit, gives it a little bit of dynamics. Just talk louder. I'll try and talk louder, or I'll try and remember to pause, Paul. Sorry about that. Technology, it's not my friend. Hates me. Pause. Yeah, so an EQ block, bring the gain down, tweak the EQ to your liking, and you can actually add high end, scoop more mids, maybe shave a little bit of that, and actually change the characteristic of the guitar if you felt like it. Want a more jazzy sound, bring that high end down. I'll take those mids back up a little bit. Whatever you like. And back to where we were. So one pedal, I've got two channels. EQ before or after loop. Great question, Jack. That kind of is sort of what I'm doing now. So if you imagine, so there's, I assume, Jack, by the way, you're talking, are you talking about an actual EQ pedal in one of the effects loops in Helix, or using Helix full cable method with an amp? Let me know. Let me know. But yeah, at the moment, so if this was kind of an actual amp and pedals and whatever, there would be the amp, these would be hitting the front end, and these would kind of technically be in an effects loop, I guess. To be true to that, I'd separate the amp and cab, but I'm being greedy and using all of the blocks. Jack, let me know. There we go. So the other EQ that I've got in the front, so there's my kind of gain cut. I've also got a gain boost, and that looks like that. So what I've done, I've shaved a ton of low end off, kind of fell out the mid frequency a little bit. That's on full, kind of taken a little bit high enough. I'm going to add that back in because why not? And boosted the level 7.5 dB, and that suddenly, Podgo, I use the simple as a boost. Right, okay, well, if you're using it as a boost, then yeah, you want it kind of in the front of the amp. If you want it, as in, if you want a gain boost, like I'm about to do, and you'll see, then yeah, put it in front of the amp. If you want a volume boost for a solo, then put it after the amp, and I can show you that as well. So let's do the gain boost in front of the amp real quick. So that's what my kind of, there's my clean sound. Kind of a thick, chunky rhythm. And then add this one, and we've got more of a solo-y kind of bitey. It's a very different sound. Nick Bell's in the house. There you go, Nick. That's your kind of, that's way too gamey for Eddie, but it's that kind of... Or Nuno. That was terrible. I will never do that again. And you can tweak that to your heart's content. If we add the low gain back in, tweak that mid frequency a little bit lower. Now, because of the nature of this amp, it kind of needs that low gain cut, otherwise it just gets flubby. Sorry, Paul, my bad. I remember. Pause. So I'll sweep through the mid frequency, and you'll, because that's boosted 12 dB, you'll hear that. Change. So I kind of like it around there. It's kind of like not a half-cocked wah. You can kind of get that frequency for sure. But almost kind of like a rat pedal, you know, does a very specific thing, or a treble booster or something like that. Just tightens that low end up, like makes it less flubby. Obviously the gain is boosted, so it's adding more gain as well. So yeah, just a ton of fun. Cheers, Nick. So, more coffee before we carry on. Hopefully that's making sense. So 2 EQ pedals in the front of a gainy amp. One's a cut, cleans it up, use it as a clean channel. One's a boost, totally transforming the sound, maybe as a lead thing. And it's great for all that kind of shreddy. Yeah, all that comes out rather easily-ish. That was really messy, sorry. Right, so I've got 3 EQs after. I'm going to save this one because that's really cool. Let's do this one. So this is the kind of Igor trick, stroke John Cordy video rip-off trick. On the video, it's actually that. Now, if I go to the clean channel, this comes out a little bit more clean channel. I'm going to add my high end back in. There we go. So what this is doing, the high and low shelf, the high end is stock. I've taken the low frequency down. It's usually around 150. Let's tweak that there, and boosted that right the way up. What this does is just kind of, especially if you're using maybe an FRFR or you're missing that kind of air movement, there's something around that kind of 150 hertz frequency that just kind of gives you that beef. You know, the sound on that sound on its own is great, but when I add all of this 150 hertz, it's just going to get kind of a little bit too boomy. So you'll see kind of a little bit, or you won't hear it as much. If you've got an amp model or a tone that's kind of lacking in that kind of super low end, this one works really well. And it sounds like this. Now, if you are listening on your phone or a device or whatever, that's probably not going to come through. In the room, it just kind of makes the sound and makes it go like, whoa, on the low end. You definitely kind of feel a bit more air movement coming out the speakers. So do go and listen to this back on studio monitors or through headphones or whatever, and it does that. It's kind of subtle, but it definitely adds something. The fundamental tone isn't changing. It's just adding some meat on the low end. So that's pretty cool. So this one, this is just kind of fun, really. So you see some extreme settings in there. This is sort of that 90s nu metal thing. Just a little bit of fun if you write music or you're playing any of that sort of stuff. This kind of makes the sound rubbish. Makes it sound like a little kind of battery powered amp, but it's great as an intro for kind of some song or whatever, like a lo-fi thing. So you go, shall I turn it on? You know what I mean? Kind of just as that radio. The Lakini's Juice intro. I don't know what that is, but it kind of does that. No, I won't even try, I won't even attempt to try and remember it on camera. Riffage, nice, good. Yeah, man, it's shamelessly nicked from King's X. And again, this is probably not going to come across very well, Facebook or whatever. C sharp. It's just drop D. So that's C sharp dadgad. That's way too complicated for a tiny mind like mine. So that's a cool little trick. So one more thing I want to cover is something that, I don't know if I did it by accident or just kind of went one day, ooh, I know, I'm going to do that and see if it works. And it did. So you'll see, sorry, Scott, you've lost me. I just used the very action. Yeah, you can absolutely do that too. So you'll see kind of tons of people using multiple amp setups and running them in parallel. And I've done that and it sounds great. And one amp sounds a certain way and another amp sounds another way. And you combine the two kind of frequencies together and it kind of fills out all the frequencies. I'm going to do that with EQ. So showing you the signal change. So again, we've got guitar coming in, hitting some stuff, hitting the amp. We're going to leave these off. Then the signal splits. I've got reverb going out one side. So this is, if you are listening stereo, that is coming out both amps, both speakers. That should hopefully be panning. And then that is coming out the send into a separate input. So what this essentially is, it's kind of almost like a wet dry thing. So I've put a delay in there just to kind of demonstrate. So if I put that delay on, it's just out that side or that side, depending on how you've got things wired up. It doesn't have to be a delay. That can be anything. If I turn that mix up a little bit. It can be whatever effect you want. Delay is just probably the easiest for now. But you'll see I've got an EQ in there. If I go into that EQ, it's my favorite, the Cali. And again, you'll see some kind of fairly extreme settings. So just to kind of show you, if I put that there. So this is what this EQ sounds like on its own. It's just like, it's just, ooh. And let me just kind of, it's ooh, it's that face, ooh, and that, not like a good, that's just a terrible, terrible sound. Yeah. But, I'm going to put it down there, turn it off. By doing this and coming out its own output, so there's that sound. That's going all through there and then coming out, and then the signal's getting split. And if I put it on here and into its own output, I'm essentially adding another tone on top of this tone. And I'm going to pretend it's another amp. And the cool thing about that is, if you're using maybe a blackface and kind of a British Class A thing, they feel very different and they respond differently to pedals. So if you've got pedals in front of both amps, those pedals will respond differently. Now, that could be fine, but for me, I kind of want to go, right, well, no, I want this pedal to react or feel a certain way, the right gain structure and the right compression and all that business. That won't necessarily happen through two completely different amps, especially if you get in two different EQs. So doing this kind of just gets rid of all that. You've got one amp model that feels a certain way, responds a certain way to any pedals that you put in front of it, and adding that EQ just adds that extra dimension. So crank that a little bit more, I'm going to a little bit more of that, and there we go. So without and with. So again, there's every chance you're not going to get the full effect on that, but I will upload this preset to custom tone, and I'll put a link in the comments or on the main description stuff, and you can try it for yourself. Like I say, you'll need kind of like separate outputs to get the full effect in this, but in the room, that speaker's doing the kind of big beefy that, and then when I kick that EQ on, that's coming out that speaker. And you can kind of blend in how much of that you want. So if you want more of that, or less, you just use the level. Oh, sorry, excuse me. That was too much. That was way too much. That's kind of a nice balance. So I'm getting that kind of beef and that kind of thickness from the amp model on its own, and then I'm getting all those kind of mids and that honky kind of stuff out of the EQ, or my theoretical second amp. Does that make sense? I hope so. And if you put that on, and that's actually a trick if you look at any rig rundowns from Phil X, you'll see he's kind of got his big head and 412 cab, and that's kind of doing the meaty stuff. And when he wants to do a solo, he's got a teeny weeny little amp that he will add into the mix, and it's not particularly loud. It's certainly nowhere near as loud as like a 100-watt head through a 412, but because of those frequencies, it fills out the frequencies that you lack in a 412, basically. And that's kind of what this is doing. So you can use it as a solo boost. If I crank that level a little bit more, so you don't need particularly a lot of level. I mean, this is still in minus figures. That's actually, even though that's the levels at minus 1.5, that is giving a bit of a level boost because I am boosting frequencies, but not a significant one. It's more about the tone and cutting through over snare drums and cymbals and keyboard players. And obviously when we take a solo, everyone else gets louder as well, because everyone wants to be the loudest when guitar players want to be the loudest. Yeah. If I put that front end boost on as well. If I had the delay and that low end boost, it's just big, beefy. I'm not loud enough in the room to get feedback, because I will really upset my neighbours, so I won't do that. So hopefully that makes sense. There was a comment earlier about use the simple as a boost. Yes, so I will do that real quick. Well, I've kind of done it with that, so I can use it as a solo boost. If I turn that one into simple EQ, everything's kind of set flat. If I just boost that a couple of dB. So this is something, again, I've talked about. If you're using a gain block as a level boost, what can happen with a gain block is Fletcher-Munson curve. So you're just like, there's no EQ on this at all. What's actually happening is it's boosting everything. So every frequency is boosted, and as things get louder out of a speaker, you potentially get more low end and more high end, and that ultimately kind of scoops the mids, and it's just a little bit nasty. So what I will want to do with this, I want to boost some mids, and cut some highs just a wee bit, and feel out that mid frequency. Yeah, a little bit higher. So I want some high end. Shave a little bit more low end off. That can't, again, don't know how well this is coming across on Facebook, YouTube, whatever you're watching on, but yeah, in the room, that's a better solo boost. So before the amp, doing that is going to boost the amp. If it's a clean amp, it's like going to be a significant volume boost because of the headroom involved. On a dirty amp, it's just going to get dirtier and filthier. So the EQ frequencies will want to be different. So it's just a case of messing around. So there you go. Hopefully that kind of made sense. If you're coming in late, where have you been? There you go. Go back and watch it. This will be saved on Facebook and YouTube for you to view later. Hopefully through something that isn't your phone or an iPad or whatever, or even laptop speakers. Like I say, if you can listen to some of these through decent studio monitors or decent headphones, then you'll hopefully hear this a little bit better. Facebook and YouTube compression willing. So yeah, some of this is just pick the EQ. I like simple EQ. I like the calligraphic, just because it's a lot easier to kind of find the stuff. I don't know specific frequencies, so anything that keeps it simple for me is lovely because I'm a little bit dim, and I like simple, like me. So before the amp, we'll either boost or cut. Gain. After the amp, we'll take whatever sound you have and completely manipulate it. Like I said, if you are using an EQ after an amp and a cab block to fix something wrong with the fundamental tone, then maybe look at changing the mic on the cab, or maybe even the amp or some of the EQs on the actual amp. You want to get your kind of fundamental core tone out of the amp and cab before you start adding EQ, rather than trying to go, well, this is sort of there or thereabouts, and then fix it. That, for me, is just a massive kind of time suck, and I don't like things that take too much time because I'm a little bit lazy. So hopefully that made sense. I'll try and keep an eye on any questions on both Facebook and YouTube, and I'll answer as they come in. Next up, I believe we have Mr. Tony Campanovo. So same time, same place next week. Go and check him out. He's a lovely man. And then I think we'll have Nick Bell, and then you've probably got me again, depending on where we are in the holidays, because I don't even know what day it is. But again, thank you so much for watching. I'll upload this preset for you to download, have a mess around, change the frequencies, change the amp model, do whatever you want with it. It is yours for free. And stay safe, stay healthy, stay well. Have a great morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're tuning in the world. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Cheers.